Hey guys, how's it going? So in this one, I wanted to go over actually like load testing the endpoint. What does that mean? High level. How many requests can we send? What are the latencies like? How do we actually set that up inside of CloudWatch? Basic monitoring tools, right? Like if our endpoint is taking way too long to serve a request, is that not okay for our company? Is it okay for our company? All those kinds of things, looking at averages, medians, modes. You can set alarms, the whole nine yards. I just want to keep this as simple as possible. So per usual, I made a make file command, and it's just called make sm load test, and this will just send 100 requests to the endpoint, and it will give you this quick little summary out. It'll tell you like how many requests were successful and errors. If you're just starting your endpoint, you'll get some errors, and you can actually, if you ramp up the number of requests, you'll get plenty of errors. And then you can get like latencies, your tail latency, like this is a P95 of 4,000 microseconds. It's like almost 4 seconds, right? That's going to be unacceptable for like any company that needs like instant predictions, right? You probably need like P95s well under, I don't know. It depends what your use case is. I guess it changes and how much money you're willing to spend, but right, you want something in the microseconds, extremely low milliseconds, something like that, where it doesn't affect user experience, or even if it's an internal endpoint, like you're doing fraud and you need to send a fraud score to the front end at some case. And then eventually you'll watch metrics if you set it up. So let's just go over what the make file is doing really fast. All it's doing is just calling this sm load test, and these are your default counts and concurrencies, and it's just calling this load test endpoint. I just made a really quick Python file to load test the endpoint. Here's like your base payload, you make the payload, you invoke the endpoint, all that kind of stuff. Here's like all the type of args you can add, any kind of concurrency, and then you get latencies, and that's eventually what it will print out. That's not really the point of the video, is to like digest this. You can go through and read it if you'd like, but essentially it's just sending a bunch of requests rather than one singular smoke test. How did I actually create that inside of Terraform? In Terraform, there's a variable called endpoint, which I set up, and then I create a resource, which is an AWS CloudWatch dashboard, just name it latency. And then here's the dashboard body. Again, this dashboard body is pretty universal, and you can actually manually create this in the GUI, but per usual, I wanted to make it as code-based a product for you all to see as possible. And so the same thing applies here. You run the make plan, make apply, and this will spin up the whole nine yards. So even if I came in here and I did make plan, you won't see this because it's already deployed, but you would run a make plan from here, and it would tell you, you know, all the ECR stuff. Mine says no changes. If you have ran the last video and now are just creating this individual guy, it will show you that there's going to be one change. It wants to create a new dashboard. So from there, you can just look at a couple things like I want the P95 stat. This is really just the syntax, the SageMaker model latency, and the endpoint name. And then same thing here. I want to know the invocations, like how many are being sent. And so let's go actually see what that looks like inside of the dashboard. Inside of the dashboard, I went to CloudWatch and then dashboards, and you can see that I have this Condor dev, which I was playing around with just manually for fun, just to see what other metrics I had access to. And then I created this Condor latency. This is the Terraform-based dashboard. And so when I click on this guy, you can see that there's like a bunch of hops and spikes. Why? Because I'm manually invoking this endpoint, right? If you were in production at a company, you would be getting endpoint requests almost constantly. Like at Coinbase, when you're getting fraud checks, it's happening constantly across everybody's app 24/7, right? So you're going to get a lot smoother invocations, model latencies, the whole nine yards. But you can see that I'm just provisioning this with single manual clicks from VS Code. And so the dashboards, this just gives me my latency, right? For example, milliseconds. And then you can see that I have, here's my other P95 latencies. And so I can also create alarms based on this inside the GUI. Again, whatever your company is after is what you would create the alarm for. So if this looks fine and your big issue is not actual model latency, maybe you're doing like just batch overnight jobs where it doesn't matter if you're getting 1 or 2 second calls from this endpoint to somewhere else in the pipeline, it's no big deal. But if you're like, I need model latency to be extremely quick, you can come in here and click create alarm and then go down those steps. You can also create this inside of Terraform. this is the SageMaker invocations, right? Just how many are being called at random times, right? You can see that I have, like I called like 94, and then I called like 200, and I called a different amount. And the dashboards are always a little delayed by a couple minutes. So if you're just sending your first request, wait a couple minutes. But that's really how you can monitor high level, tail latencies within inside of your SageMaker endpoint. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please send it into the chat below. But I hope this gave you a high level understanding of like you can create really anything that you'd like inside of your dashboards to monitor, actually follow along with how your model is doing. So anyways, guys, appreciate your time as always. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.